Hello everybody. I'm not really used to this. Sorry for the nervousness. I'm not really sure about how to go about this. I mean, it's sort of out of the blue, but I want to at least put what happened out there for other Italian fans like myself. I guess I'll just talk, type or whatever, and just get this over with. As much of an interesting experience as was, I rather not remember it and continue on with my dumb life. Alright, so this happened a while ago, before school started, when it went down. But I should really probably go back even further to when it really first started. It was when Axis Powers Hetalia was in full swing. Second season was still bounding through the fandom and giving out new glorious episodes every Monday or so. My older sister and I were both very involved in the series, which was a rare occasion since she often didn't share interests with me. Oh, so I would force myself to get into whatever she was getting into so we could at least have a reason to hang out. But this was the first time she came into my fandom without me working for it. It was really nice. Considering it was still unknown in our small town, it was even nicer to just have someone to relate to. She and I cosplayed together, watched episodes together, and got merchandise together. You know, the whole cabane. Though she had always been able to get more stuff than I was because she actually had a job. At some point, she actually bought a bootleg Hetalia DVD so she could watch it at any time. A picture which I provided here thanks to my mother lending me her camera for a second before she had it sold the next week. Of course, all the episodes just being whipped from the internet, sites that had them subbed. I watched 1 or 2 episodes with her, but really I was content with watching them online, so I left her to it. After about 2 or 3 weeks after she got the DVD, she started to act really weird, is the best way I can describe it. In a drop of a hat, she dropped the whole Hetalia series, saying inside her merchandise and selling her Hetalia cosplays, even selling some of them. When I tried to ask her about what was up, she just said she didn't want to talk about it, to the point where she even angrily glared at me if I even mentioned it to her. I was extremely disappointed at losing my sister when it came to simply bonding in the fandom. At the same time, I was feeling that she grew out of it or found something better, which I really don't blame her. That mindset really especially fit in well, she started to read Homestuck soon after it to have at least something to do. Now here's where things get even weirder. Now, it's been a while since, probably like a month or so since it happened. I'm not sure why, probably a phone call from my best friend. I got the orders to watch some episodes with just some good classic Italy. Though the internet was currently being worked on by my dad since he was charging phone providers and all that mess. So I decided to look for the Hetalia DVD my sister had. It took me a long while, but I found it shoved in the back of the DVD cabinet. I'm not sure exactly why she shoved it back there. Well, at the time at least. The bootleg wasn't that bad really, it was just stolen fan art of everyone as chibis around the world with the title on top. Same for the discs, just printed out fan art stolen from the internet. I popped the DVD in the player in my room and decided to look through the episodes to find a really fun one. Maybe the one where Romeo was first introduced. As I went through the episode choice option though, I found something really weird in episodes 23 and 24. For those not in the know, the Witten in Switzerland episodes. Very cute episodes. And the 24th has the conclusion of the Axis on an island arc thing. But there was another skill choice, like an episode, but there really wasn't a text next to it, saying what number it was or what the episode was about. There wasn't that it was Untitled that caught my eye, but the screenshot of it. It was Italy smiling, looking upwards in a constant daze. His eyes actually opened, mind you, with glazing eyes and what looked like sand, like perhaps he was laying on it. This blew my damn mind, for this was something new. I craved for new things in the fandom, always. Perhaps this was a hidden chapter I wasn't aware of, like a bonus episode. I bit my lip and trembled with excitement, and I knew I had this all to myself. Wait till my friends hear about this. I'm going to be more ignorant than anyone else. Of course, when I look back, I wish I haven't found it. Without much to do, I clicked the select button on my remote to watch it. The title animation appeared as always. The large orchestra blaring out for a few seconds to show the Japanese text of Hetalia with Axis powers next to it. Soon after, it shifted to the view of the island that the Axis were standing on. Japan and Germany sitting against a shade of a tree, while Italy just laid in the sand, soaking up the sun with that cute dumb look he always had on his face. Now, before I go on, I've read stories like this before about lost episodes of cartoons. Stories that I didn't believe in until now, honestly. And I know how they went on about it being in extremely bad quality. But this actually wasn't too bad. So it wasn't the best quality. It was still quite pixelated from being whipped off of a website, then born onto a disc, but it was okay. The sound was just a tad muffled. Nothing too out of the ordinary, of course. This was kind of made it creepier later on when it was able to be seen better. But I'll get to that in a bit. Back to the episode. While Italy was sunbathing in his jacket and shorts, the camera cut over to Japan and Germany. Though they both look a tad upset, if not a bit worried. And then they start to speak. Two things caught me off guard. First, there was no subtitles, so I had zero idea what they were talking about. Hey, I may be a proud anime nerd, but I'm not to the point where I know any Japanese text or whatever. And secondly, the voices were actually those who voiced them in the series. I was extremely impressed of such raw footage, though it was a bit muffled there with no subs. Oh well, as long as I hear Germany's voice actor keep talking, I was happy all the way. The two seemed to be chatting about something serious, Germany clenching his stomach from time to time in pain as Japan would nod and set a hand on his stomach as well. My guess was that they had run out of all food to eat, so that left them starving. That was kind of a downer way to start the episode on. But it was only the beginning here, so maybe there was a fun way to get food later on in the episode. Just then, Italy then had called out, having the two of them look up to where he was, which was now currently running around in the ocean. He waved at them and the two of them waved back, before the other went back to just playing in the sun and water. I didn't notice this until then, but the only thing playing in the background of this was the ocean's waves. Something not uncommon, but it certainly kept the atmosphere kind of stoic, you know? Especially when the focus was to be hungry and worried nations in the shade. But either way, I was too sucked up in just the new beautiful material, I just didn't question it. I didn't even care that I didn't know the bulk of it. I mostly care for the accents anyways, to be honest with you. The nations were quiet for a while, before Japan had seemed to act something again. Germany looked at him in shock, almost exclaiming before being quietly hushed by the island nation, making him whisper the line instead. Ooh, what's Japan thinking, I thought. But Japan had repeated the Japanese statement in a more quieter and clearer tone. not taking his eyes off of Italy and the water. For a few moments, the two of them discussed the issue, obviously talking about the Italian, though soon enough the two of them nodded in agreement. At that moment, even though it was just for a few seconds, Jomi had made the saddest face I have ever seen. Like he could burst out in tears at any moment, but kept it back. Honestly, I nearly flipped my seat at such emotion, even if it was short, though it made me wonder even more what brought it on. The scene changed to nighttime. The three nations huddle around the fire for warmth, though they seem at least content with their jackets on. As usual, Italy was fast asleep next to it, sleeping coherently while leading the other two nations to their thoughts. Still, only the sounds of the ocean crashing against the shore was heard in the background as the two were silent, though soon enough the camera panned over them, giving each other a subtle nod. In unison they stood up, going over to Italy, and picked him up very carefully, not wanting to wake him up. At this point, I was very confused. What were they going to do with him? Were they going to a new location? Quietly, they followed the sleeping nation over to the ocean, and carefully set him face down. Japan setting his hands over the other's head so to keep it still below the water's surface. It didn't take long until Italy began to thrash around, bubbles popping furiously on the water next to his head, only having Japan press down hard while Germany was looking away with eyes closed and lip being bitten into hard. While this was going on, my mouth was hanging and jaw like an idiot. Japan and Germany were drowning in Italy. Why? As I just watched this insanity, I recognized the Japanese words from Japan, translating to, "I'm sorry, Italy." What the hell? After about 15 agonizing seconds, which felt like almost forever of watching the poor nation, Italy's limbs fell with a plop in the water and the bubbles ceased to rise anymore. The deed was done. But why? Japan and Germany picked up the now dead Italy and brought him back to Seoul, placing him down next to fire, while Germany sat aside, just staring at the fire as if contemplating at what he just did. Japan unleashed his sword and kneeled down next to the corpse, taking off his own jacket and setting it aside. With one more look to her blondie before back down, Japan took a deep breath before making an incision from the base of his neck all the way down to his belly button, cutting it a bit more so he'll be able to flip the skin back to reveal the bloody organs of the once living nation. At this point, I had to pause the episode. I was feeling lightheaded just looking at it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I read and looked at Gory's stuff, Hetalia stuff included, but seeing it in the show's art style, done with the official voices, or if it was fake, a really good artist and a really good sound alike, it was just way too surreal for me. And while I had the TV paused, I had a good chance to look at Italy's insides. Jesus Christ, that sounds so weird when I type this. And they just looked so real. Not that they were hyper-realistic or anything, but if it was as if like the artist had stared at the inside anatomy of a real person for hours, drawing every little detail, making it realistic, making it real. I wanted to stop watching. I wanted to just turn it off and abandon that TV with the DVD inside. I was already too far in. I had to see this through the end. It would haunt me for the rest of my life if I stopped there. After taking a short breather and drinking some water, I pressed play on my remote to resume the madness. Instantly, I was being whiffed by a slurp sound of Japan sliding his hand into Hitalia's insides and pulling out one of the organs out of place. It looked like a liver. With it so detailed, it was hard not to mistake the organ. Japan sighed as he cut off the connecting strand with his sword and set the mess of organ into the other's discarded jacket before going back in and setting aside a kidney. Both of them. While Japan sorts around, Jeremy reaches over whose sticks he seemed to have sharpened earlier and propelled the sharp end through each organ that Japan had laid out. With a sad sigh, he set the organ kebabs on a range on the fire so it could be cooked, which I didn't know how that was even possible. Once more, after a seemingly long period of time, Jeremy poured the now cooked liver from the fire while handing Japan, who appreciated it with his arm still bloodstained, a kidney. Both of them were in silence before Japan murmured something in Japanese and took a large bite from the organ. Ugh. It still makes me feel weird. It makes me want to fall out when I think about seeing that thing. But that lightheadedness faded as I heard something that made me gasp. Japan? Italy? Both of them turned and shocked, the camera panning over to so that Italy was awake. What? How was he awake? They drowned him. Or was he just unconscious? I wasn't even sure what was going on, and it seemed like the other two had no idea either. Japan and Jeremy tried to explain themselves, but Italy began to grow more panic. Slowly getting what was happening, he began to scream in pain, fear, and sadness. I didn't even pinpoint what emotions were there. It was so weird to hear him like that. It almost sounded like the man who voice acted him was in a large amount of pain himself. Really good acting on his part. Japan and Jeremy went over to him, trying to get him to be quiet. Though, after the large confusion and everyone yelling at once, Jeremy was the one to finally scream for everyone to be quiet. Shaking Italy to try to make him quiet, resorting to tugging the cord to make him stop momentarily. At this point, when I started to laugh, I was practically at the point of tears and sickness. Japan talked, trying to appear strong and trying to explain the situation. My guess of the situation was there was no more food left, so they were going to eat Italy since he was the weakest. Though he was a nation, right? They were all nations. Why did he have to resort to cannibalism? Was that why Italy woke up? Jeremy, he comforted Italy while being dissevered. Soon enough, Italy gave an understanding nod, whimpering in pain and fear as well. He spurted out something, pausing at a point to cough, blood drooling down his chin. Now it was Japan's turn to talk, seeming to try to comfort him in a soothing tone. And after his small speech, Italy nodded once more before looking down, seeing that Jeremy was grabbing his hand tightly with another nod from Japan. Germany. Japan went back over and scooped his head into his now somewhat functioning body, pulling and cutting out his spleen and setting it aside. Italy almost screamed reduced to a mixture of whimpering and sobbing. The camera cut to a view of his and Jomi's hand becoming more connected to each other. The shot panned up to the frowning Jomi, who once glanced to Japan's book before speaking again, calling Italy's attention. He spoke for a bit, trying to smile, and soon Italy smiled back at him. For once in the series, actually opening his eyes to reveal the golden honey color, and called him the familiar word he was used to calling him, Captain. Then there was a time skip, and soon a large portion of organs were lying on Italy's jacket. Things I could recognize being intestines, pancreas, bladder, practically everything but the brain, lungs, and heart. Japan wiped it on his forehead, smearing blood on it accidentally before impaling them on sticks and sticking them into the fire. He turned back to Germany. He was still holding Italy's hand. He crawled over to get a closer look. And Italy seemed to have died once again. His eyes gently glazing and staring blankly upwards with a small smile on his face. This thought was the very one. Japan looked up to Germany, seeing that he was frowning, blue eyes glazing with tears as he still tried to get over what happening this to his friend. Japan set a hand on his shoulder, murmuring something in Japanese, seemingly comforting, making Germany nod in agreement and sigh sacredly. Japan frowned lightly at this before he moved aside, grabbing the dead Italian face, free hand, and squeezing it lightly, saying something to Germany before looking to the fire where the organs were roasting. Germany glanced back to the fire for a moment before looking up to the sky where Italy was staring. The camera panning upwards to it, past the stars and everything, until it was completely black. And then the next episode started playing, just like that. No credits or anything. Just left the episode on a cryptic or optimistic note. I still have no idea. I wish I could have run it on my computer to get screenshots, but the disc refuses to play here for some reason. I can never really have a good camera to snap a clear pixel. But I rather not look at that again. It may not sound as bad when you read this, but that made me get away from Italia for a while, honestly. Though I'm not as weak stomach as my sister, I still love the series to this day. But since then, I refuse to watch any anime episodes. I would prefer to see fan-made gore over official ones any time.